Yo, okay. There is a saying in Germany that goes like, "I don't want to lean too far out of the window." It means that there is something that you want to point out, but it might be that you expose yourself by doing so. Um, the thing is, what I want to talk now, as I announced in my introducing video to this new direction, to today now, I want to talk about I want to hone in on the infective way that identity disturbed personalities can send a shockwave through a social structure. It's like a vacuum bomb that implodes because there is a vacuum of identity that sucks the identity or kind of switches and destabilizes the identity cores that are around this person in a chaotic way, or it can be like an explosion that kind of has the same effect. Okay, so why I said this, that I don't want to lean myself too far out of the window, is because it's really hard on YouTube, social media, to find a thin line of staying grounded and based in some way, but I know that I can do it. Um, I say this, I don't even want to judge other channels or people. I just have my own taste, my identity core. And I respect channels or people who make videos in a rather spiritual way, because on my channel I often told you, you can, spirituality is kind of a precursor for psychology. Psychology is more widely accepted, yet it yet spirituality is the older pseudoscience, so to say, or human experience, I would almost claim. And it basically describes the same things happening, while spirituality rather focuses on using the world, the spirit world, which is the same for native folks. The world and the spirit world are absolutely overlapping for, let's say, native people in many cases. So they use the world to describe what happens within the psyche, within the human being. So they say there are spirits that possess the person. Okay, that's why they're crazy. Psychology sucks all this spirit world into the psyche. Carl Gustav Jung would say this is the consciousness, the subconsciousness, and the collective subconsciousness. And we have the whole world of psychology. That's it. Okay, that's within the psyche. It gives a little bit more responsibility to the individual, probably, because it's not spirits from the world that are evil or bad or insane, but it's the person that is evil, insane, whatever. Because of reasons, we have the psychology. I'm not going to describe the reasons, but it looks at childhood trauma in many cases, but also at neurologic divergence It can look at brain functions or dysfunctions, and also at genetic predispositions. So, so in this video now, I want to talk about identity disturbance, and to be safe, I want to talk about observations and experience I made, because it's safe to talk about your own experiences. This way, I am not confabulating or lying or spreading something I can't back up. Okay, so I found it very safe to speak about observations or my own thoughts. Anyway, um, see, where do we go from here? Okay, why I want to say what I said. Um, the the spiritual channels on YouTube, there are some who are focused on speaking about these topics only from the spiritual side, and they will say that people can shapeshift and that there are these demonic things happening, that also once you have woken up and you have the narcissistic awareness and you go no contact, that other people might um, you know, show the same traits as the narcissist, as if this spirit jumps people. And and things like that, okay? So you see what I want to say. This is, for me, a little bit questionable in terms of the way you see the world, the way you explain the world. This way it is for you. So I would not adopt or try to propagate this point of view. I find it more safe for myself and for other people to understand it in a psychological way. These phenomenons, okay? Because whatever you believe, you give reality to it, okay? And this being said, as a person with a lot of self responsibility and grounding and so on, you can also use other ways to understand things, but it's not for everybody to think about these things in this way, because uh yeah, I don't want to there is a lot of dangers, because it can be that people get paranoid or other things just because they have the wrong view of the world. Um, and this phenomenon that I just mentioned can also be described psychologically, because when you have a narcissistic awareness and you have been hurt by these people that activated your childhood trauma to get a certain reaction from you, um, you then become reactive. For when you see the whole pattern, you are not triggered by this manipulation of the childhood trauma anymore, but you're triggered by the predator, him or herself, because you trace back what is really going on. And this means you will have a strong reaction to anyone who shows you narcissistic traits, even if this person is not a real fully fledged narcissist or whatever. But narcissism is in everybody. It's a defensive, primitive um, reaction. It's part of humans. You could say a healthy human is um, is complete. Is there is a narcissist, but much more around it, and this makes it complete and healthy. But a narcissist is stripped of a lot of human um, parts, you know, stripped of emotional intelligence, stripped of reality testing, dependent of a shared fantasy, stripped of real empathy, dependent of mirroring, and so on and so on and so on. So, what I want to say is this is what makes narcissism so dangerous and disturbing for the victims. There is some narcissism in everybody, but it is not necessarily pathologic. And when you have the awareness, it takes time. You need to heal up and integrate a lot of things in yourself, and so on and so on and so on, to not be triggered by this too much, because it will be a topic because you put awareness to it in your whole world, and this is the process of healing. Now, where I want to go here is I wanted to tell you that there is a spiritual way to explain it, but probably the psychological way to explain and understand it is more grounded and more safe for you. Now, when we're talking about um, these identity disturbances, we need to understand the psychological background. And again, I could do this in a spiritual way, but we stay on the psychological way today. Um, it means a person lacks identity core, reality testing. Um, See, your identity core is simply the memory and awareness of who you are, okay? And it grows organically and goes on organically, and it's effortless and is not externally regulated. You don't need fantasy that you have to coerce on others and they have to validate it so you can believe it. Um, Yet, this is exactly what people with identity disturbances need to do. Um, and this is dangerous for everybody around them. Okay, so real mental illness is no joke. It's not something. It's not something that you can overlook. It's the elephant in the room. And within a narcissistic family cult, there is a lot of effort to normalize this elephant in the room, to create a pseudo mutual or pseudo hostile family. It's a closed system, and within the system, there's a shared fantasy that is idealizing, that is that is serving to maintain the grandiosity of everybody, of the narcissists or borderliners involved, as well as serving to the shared fantasy of these persons is different. There are somatic narcissists that are mostly relying on the physical sexual grandiosity, and it must be validated and perpetuated. Or there are cerebral narcissists who believe they are intellectually superior to others. So each narcissist or borderliner has a individual grandiosity that is based in a fantasy, and reality testing is the natural enemy of this fantasy. This is why other people must be coerced to support the fantasy, the grandiosity. And this is why the family code gets closed to the outside, which means there is an internal reality that nobody is allowed to perceive. And the result is a pseudo mutual or pseudo hostile family. Um, so this, and this shared fantasy is the core. It's the core, okay? It needs to be protected and validated, and it's the process of how identity is created for these people. In other words, the narcissists or borderline, the narcissist has a schizoid core. I know it's ridiculous. I should switch to spiritual language here for a second, right? Um, they have no personality core, okay? It's not there. Um, and it's basically they don't know who they are, or they are ashamed of what they really are. They're running away of what they are. Um, it is a disturbance that comes from childhood trauma, okay? Individuation. This is the process where you receive your identity, when you understand that you are not your mother, but you are accompanied by your mother in the process of receiving your own identity. And when there are strong disturbances, then you never finish this process. And this is why you have to recreate this traumatic experience in your life over and over again to finally, 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 finally become an authentic, independent human being that is truly grandiose. But until then, you have to fake the grandiosity and everything. Okay, now, the problem when you have a person that lives in a shared fantasy, this is the elephant in the room. This is the thing that cannot be overlooked. This is dangerous for everybody around because it's a vacuum, it's an absence of human, it's an absence of everything. It's a surface, it's fake. And this emptiness must be filled constantly with content, which means these people create a shared fantasy, and when the shared fantasy is destroyed or has to be through stress and problems and reality has to be re-narrated, they create a new shared fantasy. So it's a war of fantasies that always have in mind the constant honeymoon phase, the constant validation of this individual grandiosity, whether it's cerebral or sexual or physical or whatever kind of grandiosity. It needs to be fed. It's an emptiness, it's a bottomless pit that constantly needs to consume emotional content from the environment. It also needs to consume identity from the environment, and this works by mimicking people that you then get rid of because you can't have the original and try to be like the original, because the original always outshines, out identities the fake version. So it's a constant process of consuming identity. And this has strong effects on the whole environment. It's as if this vacuum bomb implodes and soaks in something. And then there is hidden violence from the pseudo-mutual, pseudo-hostile family. And this has strong effects on everybody. And this, the people are in a kind of trauma then. It's like when a bomb explodes, people are puzzled, they are shocked, they are traumatized, they don't even realize it. They walk around like zombies. The narcissistic family releases puzzled zombies into the world. And these people are coerced under the narration of the shared fantasy. And without knowing, without wanting um, to carry this false narrative, it can spread to people who have absolutely no insight into this system. It spreads the confusion, the chaos, the false perception spreads. It's literally fake it until you make it, and the effect is scary. This is why I referred to the demonic perception of it, um, that it influences people, that it kind of jumps, okay? But there is a psychological explanation for it, but it's just much easier to explain this in spiritual or archetypal or symbolic ways, okay? Yeah, that being said, I need to get ready now for my day and just wanted to put this out there. We got a long way to go, and stay tuned and blessed in this world of projected fears, mass hysteria. Let's have trust in the history of mankind. There were strong individuals always that perceived against all odds, that persisted against all odds, and there have always been strong populations that persisted against all odds, all deception, all projection, and kept their identity. Even the Native Americans and also a lot of African tribes, they were ripped of identity. The identity was stolen. They were oppressed. They were abused, misused. Yet they are still there. They are the true, strong survivors. We're the survivors.